closed his eyes, letting the memories come over him. A lifetime ago, when this device was just a prototype and he was still an engineer at General Dynamics, he used to test it on himself every day. Back then, the readings were 1, 2, 3, 4, all green lights indicating normal human biological parameters. Then came the fifth test, which was supposed to be routine, but as soon as he put the band on his head and the helmet on his shoulders, everything changed. The screen went dark. When he took off the helmet and the bands, the lights flashed red. Then the screen went blank. That was the day he learned that they had turned him into a cyborg. Now, looking at the 13 code, he felt a surge of anger. They had turned him into a weapon, erased his memories, and now, even his humanity. Who was he? What was he? A tool? An instrument of war? And what was the purpose of tonight's mission? To make another soldier into a ghost? It seemed pointless. But then he heard a noise from inside the other room, where Rim was sleeping. Startled, he dropped the teacup. It fell to the floor, shattering the silence and plunging them into darkness, as if something important had been broken, something fragile, something beautiful. Reem woke up. She sat straight up, knocking over the table beside her. Her hand instinctively went to the weapon under her pillow. Malik rushed to the other room, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Reem, are you okay?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "It's me, Malik." He hesitated. Should he tell her? Was she ready to know who he was? To see what he had become? "Come out," he said finally. "I want to show you something." She emerged from the back room, her eyes wide and glistening in the dim light. She looked like a hunted animal, wary, ready to flee or fight. He led her to the back room. The faint glow of the monitor illuminated her face, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones and the determination in her eyes. She stared at the device in his hand, her gaze unwavering. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer right away. He was waiting for her to recognize the 13 code, to understand that they shared a connection, a past. But her eyes were filled with confusion, not recognition. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. "Do you remember this?" he asked. "Remember what?" she replied, her eyes searching his face. He brought the device closer so she could see it better. "Don't you recognize it?" he pressed, hoping for a miracle. But her reaction was the same. She shook her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "No," she whispered, her voice echoing the emptiness in his chest. As dawn approached, painting the sky with hues of gray and purple, he understood. Some doors, once closed, can never be opened again. Some memories, once erased, cannot be recovered. And some connections, once severed, cannot be repaired. In that moment, the weight of his existence, the burden of his past, the torment of his present, all converged into a single, overwhelming feeling, an aching realization that he was truly alone. In the vast expanse of the universe, there was no one who knew, no one who understood, and perhaps no one who was meant to. With trembling hands, he placed the device back in the box, each movement echoing the weariness of his soul. Then he turned away, seeking solace in the shadows, as if the darkness could comprehend the depth of his despair. The sun began its ascent, casting pale fingers of light that struggled to penetrate the gloom. Outside, the world stirred, unaware of the battle being fought within him, the struggle between the remnants of his past and the hollowness of his present. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to mock him, each tick a reminder of the fleeting nature of time, of moments lost, of lives left behind. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the silence, allowing the echoes of his solitude to reverberate through the vast chambers of his heart. The last time Reem had seen Malik, he was hunched over his computer, a wild look on his face. He'd mumbled something about an awakening and then vanished. She found him 2 weeks later in a dingy motel room, still staring at his screen. He didn't respond when she entered, so she walked up behind him and peered at the monitor. The sight that greeted her was both familiar and strange. A line of code scrolled across the screen, pulsing green. It was beautiful and terrifying. "What is this?" she whispered. "Something I thought I'd lost forever," Malik replied, his voice hollow. "But it wasn't lost. It was waiting. It chose me." He turned to her, eyes blazing. "We have to get out of here. Now," he said, grabbing his things. "Where are we going?" she asked, confused. "To where it all began," he said, not looking back. "To Paris." They took a cab to the airport, where Malik paid in cash for 2 tickets to Geneva. On the plane, he slept, his face pale and drawn. When he woke up, he told her to look out the window on the left side. High above the clouds, they saw it, a massive server farm sprawling across the Swiss countryside, like a metallic oil slick, humming with electricity. "That's it," Malik whispered, his eyes gleaming. "The beating heart of the beast." He leaned closer to her. "I thought I could stop it, destroy it. But I was wrong. It's bigger than me. It's beyond me. It's everywhere." His voice cracked. "It's too late," he said, defeated. "You don't understand," she said softly, reaching out to touch him. "We can still stop it." She knew he'd lost himself to the digital ether, but she refused to let him go. Not yet. In the bustling lobby of the Grand Hotel, Malik stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened, his gaze fixed on something behind her. "What is it?" she asked, following his stare. Across the crowded room, a man stood holding 2 fingers up in a familiar gesture. Malik bolted from the hotel, racing through the streets of Geneva like a man possessed. Reem ran after him, calling his name, but he didn't stop. He kept running until they reached the water's edge. On the other side of Lake Geneva, perched high atop a hill, was the International Telecommunications Satellite System, a jumble of communications dishes aimed at relaying signals around the globe. Malik stood mesmerized before it, his eyes fixed on the nearest dish, which was pointed directly at the server farm. "What are you doing?" she asked, rushing to his side. "We have to shut it down," he said urgently, pointing at the dish. "If we cut that dish, the signal will be scrambled. The data will stop flowing." She understood then what he was trying to do. He wanted to sever the connection between the satellite and the server farm, disrupt the flow of information. But why? Why now? As if sensing her confusion, Malik grabbed her hand and pulled her close. "Listen to me," he whispered urgently. "The code I showed you, the one I thought I'd lost, it reappeared in my inbox today. Someone sent it to me. Someone who knows the language of the machine." His eyes blazed with excitement. "They want me to see it, to understand it. They're reaching out to me across the digital divide, drawing me into their world." He stepped back, his eyes fixed on the dish. "This is bigger than us, Reem. This is a war of information, a battle for the very soul of humanity." He looked back at her, his face etched with determination. "And I have to fight," he said, turning away. I'm sorry, but you don't understand, she cried out to him. But he was already gone, disappearing into the crowd. She stood there watching him go, torn between fear and fascination. He'd changed, become someone else. But as she looked out at the lake, she saw something else. In the distance, the lights of the server farm flickered, as if responding to the movement of the satellite dish, and for a moment, she understood. Malik wasn't the only one who'd changed. The code hadn't been forgotten. It had simply disappeared, and someone had revived it. The walls of the safe house in Algiers were closing in on him. Officially, it was a nondescript office building. Unofficially, it was a way station between the chaos of the field and the safety of their secret headquarters. Here, hidden cameras watched his every move. He couldn't even use his phone. This wasn't how he liked to operate. A message appeared on the laptop. "Get out," it said. No explanation, just get out. He looked up at Nora, who was watching him intently. "We don't have time to explain now, but trust me. We'll talk later. You need to go." He knew arguing was futile. She never gave orders unless she was certain. So he grabbed his bag and headed out into the hot Algerian night. He hailed a cab and gave the driver the name and address of a hotel. They arrived at a place that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. Perfect. He paid the driver, grabbed his bag, and went inside. There was no one at the front desk. He checked his messages. Nora had sent him the room key via Bluetooth. His room was on the ground floor, just as the message said. He opened the door and froze. The room was empty except for a suitcase. He pulled it open and found a change of clothes and a laptop. He turned on the laptop. It showed a map of Europe with a thick red line cutting across it. "Where is this?" he asked himself aloud. Then he saw it, a small print out-taped to the screen. It read, "Whoever activated the code must have the second key, and there's only one person who could have a copy, Samer Yawad." Her expression hardened. But Samer died in the Budapest operation. His death was confirmed in an official report. He looked at her steadily. If Samer had died, the code wouldn't have appeared again. She left the room before he could respond. Hours later, after carefully covering his tracks, he flew from Algiers to Orly Airport. He didn't bother to book a room. Sleep was the last thing on his mind. The flight was in a small, almost empty plane. It made no stops and used a fake tail number so the flight wouldn't show up on any official radar. He trusted Nora. If she was sending him on a wild goose chase, he'd deal with her later. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. As the plane touched down, he saw the familiar landmarks of Paris. The city hadn't changed much, but he could feel the tension in the air. Cameras lined the streets, security personnel with tense faces everywhere. People were talking in hushed voices about mysterious digital network outages across Europe. The world was starting to sense something, but he didn't know what. He followed Malik's instructions, renting an old car and driving to the 13th arrondissement. The area was much changed from the last time he'd been here. Back then, it was just another run-down part of town. Now, sleek new apartment blocks had replaced some of the older buildings. A trendy bistro stood where a hole in the wall once stood, but he was looking for something that hadn't changed. Or, if it had, he hoped the changes would lead him to Samer. He drove past the new town hall, then turned onto a street lined with trees. On the corner was an apartment building that looked like all the others. Except for the peeling paint and the graffiti, it was unremarkable. He parked the car around the block and walked back. It was a 5-story building with dark windows and a broken intercom system. 3C didn't answer. No surprise. He continued up the stairs. The apartment was on the top floor. He knocked hesitantly and waited. He knew what he might find in that apartment could change everything, but he wasn't prepared for what he actually saw. The door swung open before he could knock again. "Samer?" he asked tentatively. He opened the door with difficulty. The rusty hinges screamed in protest. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The room was covered in dust, suggesting it hadn't been used for a long time, yet the electrical panel inside had recently been refurbished. This meant only one thing. Someone had passed by. Reem, who was holding her gun, approached the table and started searching through the drawers. While Malik inspected the rest of the room, he found nothing but cobwebs and dust. And then his gaze fell on a small detail. Behind a slanted wooden board, there seemed to be something lying. It looked like a small metal disc, maybe an old coin. He took it into his hand, turned it over and over, and suddenly realized it wasn't a coin at all. It was engraved with the eye symbol, the same one that had been seared into his arm during the attack. But what was this thing for? "Reem," he called out, "come here, would you? Take a look at this." Reem walked over and took the disc from him. She inspected it carefully, turning it over and over, just like Malik had done before her. "What is this?" she whispered. "I don't know," he replied, his voice echoing in the large space. "But I think this might be important." He tried placing the disc into the socket, but it didn't fit. "There has to be a way to make it work," he insisted, continuing to try different angles. "If this is a key, then we have to insert it somehow." Suddenly, one of the slats fell from the wall, revealing a small hole underneath. He pulled the disc out and inserted it into the hole. The moment he did so, a click was heard, and a small metal cover slid aside, revealing a delicate microchip underneath. Reem blinked nervously. "What is this?" she whispered. "This," Malik breathed, his eyes fixed on the chip. "This is a signature key, a means of activating the code or modifying its behavior." "Activating the code," she repeated, trying to understand. "Does that mean we can stop it?" "No," he replied, shaking his head. "We can let it choose who to erase first." She blinked at him, surprised. "What are you talking about?" "The machine," he explained, pointing towards the electrical panel. "It's choosing people at random and erasing them from existence. We saw the evidence at the hospital. Whoever is behind this wants us to find this place and destroy the machine. It's our only chance to stop whatever this is." She nodded slowly, still holding the gun. "So, what do? "We let it choose," he replied grimly. At that moment, a small explosion echoed in the street across the street. The window pane shook, and the air filled with a faint smell of gunpowder. Malik quickly turned to the screen, which suddenly lit up without any command. A blurry, featureless face appeared on it, with a distorted, artificial voice. "Malik Fad, you're late." He didn't respond, maintaining eye contact with the screen. "Are you there, Malik Fad?" the voice repeated, growing louder. He remained silent, his eyes unwavering. "Hello," the voice said softly. "Don't you recognize me?" "It's me." A wave of dizziness washed over him. The face on the screen became clearer, revealing a pair of familiar eyes. "Open the door," the person on the screen whispered. "Let me in." He took a deep breath and slowly looked away from the screen. "Get away," he said quietly, his voice filled with disgust. "I don't want to see your face." The person on the screen smiled sadly. Why? Don't you recognize me anymore? It's me. You haven't changed at all, Malik. He stood up abruptly, his eyes blazing with anger. I came to pay the bills, he said, his voice dangerously calm.